and this is the podcast with Elena. We have a workshop today. It's called Credit Repair for Home Buyers with Joe Camacho. Joe Camacho is the lead credit analyst from the Phoenix Group, and we're going to talk about his credentials in just a second. Today is January 16th, and we are ready to begin. Again, my name is Elena, and I'm a realtor in Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. I produce a variety of publications, including monthly newsletter for renters and buyers. I also have a website called elenagarrett.com that has a variety of information for those people who are trying to buy a house, or for those people who are thinking about buying a house but struggle with their credit or with their savings. I also run several Facebook groups. One of them is called Seller Financed DFW. It is for those people who are thinking about potentially buying a property with using owner financing or owner to owner financing. I also have a group called Rent to Own DFW. Both of those groups feature both informational articles and houses that you can apply for, either for a rent to own or for seller financing. For those of you who are looking for a good opportunities to buy a house that would be cheaper than usual, I have a Facebook group, Motivated Home Sellers DFW, and it just shows houses that could potentially be negotiated down but are still in a very good condition. My name is Elena. My email address is egarrett@kw.com. Here's my cell phone number. And again, I'm with Keller, Williams Central 75 in Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. Last but not least, I have a YouTube channel. So today we're doing this wonderful webcast. However, this is not the only webcast that I do. I have a variety of guests every week, almost every week on my YouTube channel. Joe Camacho has been a guest before, at least once, if not twice. And he's probably going to be a guest several more times because we have so many topics to cover. So my YouTube name is the Russian Realtor blog. So in case you're wondering where that accent is from, I'm originally from Russia. So if you type in that Russian Realtor blog, North Texas, and also I'm going to post all the links that we're providing today down here in the description of this video. If you would like to, please hit like and hit subscribe. So next time I upload a video that is in your potential interest category, you would not miss it. Now let's go to Joe. Joe has been a guest on my show a couple of times already. Once already, maybe a couple of times. He's a credit analyst. I'll let him speak for himself about his work. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Elena. Like Elena said, I'm one of the senior analysts over here at the Phoenix Group. I've actually been in the industry for about 15 years. I specialize in mortgage and business finance credit qualifications. So if you're interested in purchasing a new home, wanting just to do an overall cleanup, rebuild your credit, you have a major purchase coming up, or wanting to start your business, I actually will construct a game plan for you to get you back in that position of a well-qualified buyer.
Okay, so speaking about game plans, today is exactly what we will be talking about, how to create a game plan. I have quite a few people who contact me through one of my groups, either seller homes, either seller finance DFW or rent to own DFW. And pretty much all of them, when I add them, what is the reason that you're looking for alternative methods of financing? Nearly universally, they say either bad credit score, currently bad credit, or for one reason or another, the way that they structure their tax deductions, it doesn't work out for them to apply to a regular lender. But majority are still credit issue. Either they don't have any credit because they're paying for everything in cash. There's still people who are like that, and or they have experienced potentially negative credit events in the past, and now they're trying to rebuild from them. So for those people, I would say, in my opinion, within a year, if you work diligently at it, and if you really focus on solving those issues, you can improve your credit to the point where applying for a FHA, which is a governmental program to help first-time home buyers to finance a home, even with low down payment or no down payment, could become a possibility for you. So without further ado, let's jump into our discussion and talk about a potential situation where somebody might be. We're in January 2021. I bet a lot of people have made a resolution this year to start looking into how could they now stop renting and proceed to buying a house. I was in that position maybe 14, 15 years ago, where me and my husband, I said, how do we buy a house? And he said, well, I really don't know how to go about it, but we need to have a better credit score and we need to have lower debt. So, and we just, without knowing what to do, I picked up a book and I used the book and I kind of method through trial and error, found a way to improve my credit score. But it was a long process, took me almost 3 years because I could not, what the book said was not necessarily, I think the book was written way before, too long ago. So let's look for what's currently is the best way to help people to improve their credit. Let's just say that I'm the home buyer. I'm a buyer who wants to buy within a year. I don't know. A lot of people don't know what their credit score is. I have a statement from one of my banks that shows that my current credit is 523. Is that my true credit score? How would I find out my credit score? I know that there is one source that says download your credit reports for free. Should I trust it? Can you explain a little bit?
A lot of people that reference a free credit report per year would have to be with annual credit report. Annual credit report is a website that you can go to generate one individual report from each bureau. So it's government mandated. Basically, so Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion are privately owned companies. You do not own your own credit scores. These companies do. So the government has come in and saying, yes, you own the scores, but we're going to make sure that each consumer gets at least one copy of their credit report. The credit report is going to give you a listing of all the account information, payment history. It's extremely detailed. It won't give you any scores. You'll have to continue to keep upgrading in order to get a score. A
Okay,
lot of
so let me interrupt you. So if I go to those credit reports, they will not show me my score.
Annual credit report will not show you your scores. It will show you details of the actual credit report.
Okay.
A lot of websites are going to lean on what they call a Vantage Score 3.0. It's what you see on Credit Karma. It's what you see on Credit Wise. Even American Express uses Vantage scoring models. You have to understand, FICO has literally hundreds of different types of FICO algorithms that are out there. And when you narrow it down to the FICO algorithms that we interact with on a regular basis, you can narrow that down to about 50. Most consumers are going to deal with a FICO 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 on a regular basis. Like in the mortgage industry, it's FICO 2, 4, and 5. So when someone asks me, well, Joe, what's my real score? I'm always going to lean on a FICO rating. Now, FICO 8 is what you're going to see a lot of credit monitoring sites kind of lean on, but it doesn't have any bearing on any type of financing or, like a banking institution's not going to be utilizing it. They're going to use a little bit more of a harder number like that 245, like a mortgage company. So when the FICO like 9, 10, 11, 12 might be for some auto, they'll be for credit card lending. Every single type of industry is going to have a very specific FICO that they'll be pulling from. So when I suggest looking at a credit report, say someone says, oh, well, I want to look at my credit. I want to get a really good idea of what my credit looks like. I would actually direct somebody to Experian.com.
Can you type it in the chat? So this way, if you type it in the chat, I can put all that information into the description later.
So Experian.com is going to be where you're able to go ahead and actually generate all 3 credit reports absolutely free of charge. I noticed that when a lot of people have contacted me to kind of do an analysis or just, hey, I want to talk about your services. I've talked to another company I've utilized. I already have a credit report. And I said, well, what credit report do you have? Well, they told me to sign up for Identity IQ. Identity IQ is a Vantage Score 3.0. So let's say you're trying to get in position to purchase a home. you wouldn't want to look at the same scoring model that Credit Karma uses. You would want to use something that was FICO based so that you can get a better reading of where your scores are at and more details.
You know, do you have it written out somewhere? Because that's completely new information even for me.
I can put something out, or we could kind of go over some of that information. Identity IQ is more of an affiliate credit reporting site, so they actually solicit the credit repair companies. So when you have a company who's trying to tell you to use Identity IQ, there's two reasons why. If you keep the $29.99 package, it's because they're making a residual each month. Every month you keep it open.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're using a VantageScore 3.0 and you're only limited to 2 years worth of payment history, you're really doing yourself a disservice for a $25 credit report. I'll be honest with you. And
Mm-hmm.
also, Identity IQ is very familiar with credit repair software. So what they'll do is there's a lot of companies who are simple dispute companies. They let the machine, the computer, kind of go at it. So what you do is you upload the credit report into the system. And what it does is it'll select all of the collections, the derogatory. With credit repair software, it's very leery of certain accounts like federally backed loans, tax liens, stuff like that. So it's not going to do a full clean sweep, but it's easier to upload the credit report and let the system itself submit the automated disputes on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem with that is, one, you're not getting a full, thorough credit report with all of the payment history, and that's going to be extremely vital to a consumer. I get a lot of conversations where people say, well, this happened 5, 6, 7 years ago. Should it even be in my credit report? The problem with a lot of consumer reports like your Credit Sesame and Identity IQ, Privacy Guard, these are websites that utilize the Vantage scoring model, but they also have a 2 years. There's only 24-month of payment history on there. So when you're trying to hold somebody accountable to what do we call the 7-year rule, you have 7 years from the first date of delinquency. When an account is going okay in payment history and goes 30, 60, 90, 120, and then charge-off status, you got to trace it back to that 30. That's the original date of delinquency. That's where you're going to start, where you have your statute of limitations. Now, in the credit repair or credit reporting world, you're always going to talk about the 7-year rule, where things kind of somewhat magically disappear. You're always going to want to trace it back to the original date of delinquency, that first 30-day late pay. The thing is that if you're limited to a credit report that only has 2 years of payment history, how are we going to trace that thing back to 6, 7 years? You can't.
Mm-hmm.
So Experian.com, the reason why I like using it is you'll see a full payment grid, literally back to the opening year and dates of those months and to what it is, current. So if you had issues like this year, if you had late pays in 2014 in the month of January, guess what? It's 7 years. A lot of those late pays are going to start to fall off now.
Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't be able to see that or to hold anybody accountable if you're only dealing with a credit report that goes 24 months. I also like Experian.com because it does utilize a FICO 8, which is not it's not as accurate as a FICO 2, 4, or 5 like in the mortgage industry, but it's going to get us in that same ballpark. A lot of people complain about, well, I had a 684 on my Credit Karma score, but now when I go to see my lender, he's telling me a 575. What happened? I always say Vantage and FICO, it's kind of like, it's not apples and oranges, it's like apples and hot dogs. It's totally two irrelevant things and two different types of scoring models. Vantage is going to weigh a lot more on payment history. So what's great about Experian.com, one, it puts us in a somewhat ballpark with FICO 8, but two, it allows you to flip it over to the different variants of credit scores. So if you go and you click on the top left-hand corner, if you're on the desktop, you can go down to your credit scores, and it'll open up in a whole new section where you can see FICO scores, and you can flip it over to the mortgage model. So I just mentioned 2, 4, 5. Mortgage companies are going to pull Experian FICO 2, TransUnion FICO 4, and Equifax FICO 5. That's a typical FICO 5. Depending on what state, it could be FICO 6. But that FICO 2 is standard. So if you go to Experian.com and look at the other different variants FICO models, you'll be able to see that mortgage model there. So you get a better reading on all three bureaus. You get better payment history because it's going to be a full thorough all the way back to day one. And then you're going to be able to, for free, you're able to flip it over to that FICO 2 model. So you can see what your mortgage score is. And a lot of times there could be a different, obviously there's going to be a variance. Perfect example, I pulled a credit report yesterday for a potential client. He was a little discouraged because he was in the mid fives. His FICO 8 was a 555. When we pulled his FICO 2, the mortgage model, it was a 592.
Mm-hmm.
So
very good. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so now we have a better
mm-hmm.
idea. Where's our jump off point?
Mm-hmm.
Then I can start creating that analysis and really constructing that game plan. So a little bit of favoritism that I have for Experian.com. I use it personally as well too, just because I want the best and accurate most reading of my credit score.
Gotcha. So just to recap, can you put in, so once we get to Experian.com, number one, are we going to see the credit, as you said, we're going to be able to pull different credit scores, and we'll be able to see the credit history and the credit score all in one source, right?
That is correct. It's going to be multiple tabs that are going to be in the site, but yes, you'll be able to have access there. It is going to give you a 7-day trial. It's going to be for free. Once you cancel it out, so if you're not going to buy into a membership, they have standard memberships. I think they're like, they start at $14, $24.99, things of that nature. But you can cancel it. But what's great about it, Experian will continue to give you those alerts, an alert system, so that way you can see, like, incorrect possible utilization that you need to decrease. Maybe your balance, or maybe a new collection is populated on your credit report. That's always where it will help you stay ahead of what you might be preparing for. Because if you're trying to get a home and you're not monitoring your credit, there's going to be that limbo time of where you don't know what's really going on, and maybe something you might populate onto the credit report. You can stay ahead of that, having that alert system set up. It's the same thing with Credit Karma. I actually use Credit Karma because it's a very good monitoring site, but as far as any type of financial decisions, I think I'm going to always go back to Experian.com.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's just say that we downloaded we signed up for Experian. We downloaded our credit history, and now we can look at our credit history. What should we be looking for?
I would say, one, start looking at your personal data information. It's going to be the first couple of pages in there. A lot of folks here recently are starting to see a lot of name variances. I'll give you a perfect example. When you get married, you might have a maiden name and then you have your married name on there. I know a lot of times, a lot of folks like to keep their names even though they get married. If you decide to go ahead and change your name, make sure you're not just changing the Social Security Administration Office and the DPS, or getting your driver's license updated, but also updating bureaus with your new information as well too. Sometimes what can happen is that if you're getting ready, let's say I just got married, I want to be able to go purchase a home. If you're not getting everything updated immediately, it's going to create that name variance, what could lock you out of a mortgage report. If you are, let's say, using your name, and if you were to get married, you take your husband's name, you're punching in your new name, but you haven't updated the information with the Social Security Administration Office or the DPS or DMV. The mortgage company this is the way the system's set up, and it will automatically flag you. It looks like someone is trying to use a Social Security number when it's really you, but yet it's because it's associated with a different name. So it will lock the credit up. It will send an alert. Equifax is typically going to be, more of the sensitive one, where they'll send the alert out to Experian and TransUnion, like, hey, we're protecting this consumer because of that, this variance has popped up. And sometimes with mortgage companies, you'll end up being a zero. So the credit gets locked up, and because they're like, well, we don't want to disclose this because this is not the right person, right? So the bureaus are kind of protecting you from your information getting out there. And so I'll sometimes get a credit report from a lender, and it's incomplete. because they didn't have the proper updated information. Start
Mm-hmm.
looking at address variances, name variances. Um, Sometimes what it's going to
Actually, I will ask you. So that happened to me a couple of times. So my first name is Elena, and I've seen on my several letters arrived in my name that called spell my name wrong, Elani, which is not how my name is spelled. And it said you owe us for some phone bill. That was like $800, and I didn't even recognize the company, so I just tossed it. And then I see that name, Elani, spelled that way, pop up on one of my credit reports. So that's something that you need to be aware of, misspelling of your name.
Oh yeah, definitely. You get what we call it in the industry is called a mixed file,
Mm-hmm.
aka records as known as.
Mm-hmm.
Those things can populate derogatory information onto a credit report. I'm working with a young man right now. He's 24 years old and he's having issues with a mortgage that's on his credit report that is pretty much reporting 5 years before the day of his birth.
Wow. Okay.
So he's got it's a defaulted mortgage, and he's like, I wasn't even born yet, Joe. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
having a hard time, and I can't get anywhere with anybody at the mortgage company.
Mm-hmm.
So that mixed file could populate. The majority of the time, it's going to populate derogatory information on your credit report.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Very seldom you might inherit some positive. I've had some people were saying like, yeah, man, I've seen this Chase credit card. I worked with a client probably about 2 years ago, had a Chase credit card, $20,000 line of credit. But he's like, I kind of just left it there because it kind of opened some doors for me.
Uh-huh.
He was inheriting all the great payment history and the credit limit. So sometimes we don't want to poke the giant, but obviously what if that credit card were to get maxed out? What if that
Mm-hmm.
person were to start going into a default status and start getting late pays? It would destroy
Mm-hmm.
your credit as well. So um, even if it's something that might be beneficial in the long run, it might possibly could hinder you and hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are, you know, kind of playing dumb to the situation. If they see multiple reports and you claimed it as yours, especially if you're trying to buy a mortgage, they're going to say, oh, all of a sudden it's not, and you're going to try to file fraud. So look at your personal data information. If you are in the midst of trying to get your information updated, what I would do is create an ID. Get your driver's license, nice clear copy with your social security card, make sure it's signed, and then have also a proof of residency, like an electric bill, or maybe like a gas or water bill, and deposit those and update those directly to bureaus. So what you can do is you can go to TransUnion.com, TransUnion.com, Equifax.com, and you can create your accounts and get everything updated.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way, everything is current and all that, and you can help you with that personal data information. Or you can dispute inaccurate names, or when you open those accounts with each one individual bureau, you can dispute those names, dispute those addresses, and just say, hey, I don't live there, I've never lived there. And then that way you can make sure that when people are going to report, that positive that you're building, that it's you that's getting it, and obviously not somebody else.
Cool. So now we looked at our personal information. We checked. So when I downloaded my credit report, I was just shocked how many pages there were because I didn't realize that I had so many items to discuss. Then I realized that each one of my federal student loans, apparently each one of them appeared as a separate entry in that report, which created like I had 10 years of student loans. So
Right.
it was a very long report. And also there were some accounts I'm like, I don't even know what it is. I never seen his name before, but the name was not familiar. But the amount looked familiar. I couldn't even tell what it was for. It was a very confusing statement to me. So once we look through our personal statement, personal information, now once we start digging into it, is there like a page in it that says negative or positive?
You're going to see all your open accounts. That's
Okay.
where it's going to be installments, auto loans, student loans. You'll
Mm-hmm.
see your revolving accounts, your credit
Mm-hmm.
cards, retail stuff like that. And then it'll go to some of your closed accounts, things that you've paid off in the past, personal loans, old paid autos, like the mortgage you paid off in the past. And then with those closed accounts, will also be the accounts that you did pay off in full, but in the midst of you paying it off, you did acquire late pays. And then they'll start getting into the section of collections. You're going to have, collection companies that, your medical, your telecommunications, everything it's in that area. Your charge-offs. So let's say you let a credit card go into a default status, and it went to a charge-off account. That will remain in those open accounts. It's not a section of positive. It's just still open. So that's another thing too, that a lot of people tend to think that charge off, that the account is done. They've written it off. Reporting accurately because there's a balance on there. I get that all the time. In the finance world, yes, a charge off would mean a write off. Basically, the company who disclosed that line of credit to you has written it off as a loss, and obviously because they are a business. Um, in the world of credit, that's not what it means. Charge off means that the three reporting agencies are privately owned companies, like I said previously, and they charge a fee each month to report that information. When you make a payment to your car or your credit cards, that information is updated. That payment history is updated every single month, right? Well, that's at a fee. So that's three fees that a creditor would have to pay: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. If you're not paying them and the account goes, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150 days past due, and they eventually close it off and go to a charge-off status, why would a credit card company continue to keep paying that monthly fee to three different bureaus when you're not paying them back? And at that point, they're just burning money. So what ends up happening is they shut down the account where you're unable to use it, but in the background, your interest, your penalties, your late fees are still accruing. If the company has not sold the account off to a third-party collection agency or obtained a third party in order to collect on the account, you can guarantee that the juice is still running. When I see a charge-off account and it's 2 or 3 years old, and let's say Citi, you have a Citi credit card, and it was a $5,000 credit limit, and when you went into default status, it probably stopped reporting to your credit report or updating the report at $6,200. If it's been 2 years, by the time I look at it, I can almost guarantee you're probably looking somewhere in the ballpark of $9,000.
Oh my God.
So what happens is that people are not aware of the true dollar amount until they typically get served. Depending on what state you reside in, there's going to be a statute of limitations. That creditor still has an opportunity to come after you. In the state of Texas, where we reside, it's a 4-year statute.
Okay.
So the thing is that they still have 4 years to come after you, hit you with the judgment status, which in terms is a lien. If you're trying to make a home purchase, you cannot have any liens. That notice, that lien, will be populated in a system called LexisNexis.
I've heard about them.
Yeah, most consumers are going to know it as public records. It's where my bankruptcy got filed, where my judgment was filed, my tax liens, federal tax liens, state tax liens. Again, we're depending on what state you reside in, and that's where they're going to hold all that information. LexisNexis is kind of what I call like the internal bureau for the courts, right, where it was being filed at. They check your LexisNexis report at the mortgage with the lender right before title. So when you're getting to the final stages of your home and you're the next step is, hey, we're going to go sign our papers and pick up our keys. They're going to check that and to make sure there's no liens. And sometimes people are completely unaware because they don't see it on the public records, they don't see it on the credit report, but it can be something that can be there that's been kind of accruing over the years.
So let me then ask you this. So a lot of people go to a website, so they're online browsing on Zillow, right? And they're like, okay, we're like, I'm hot on getting the house this month, and let me click on this link that says, get mortgage payments will be $1,100. Click here to apply. So they click here to apply, and they get this neat pre-approval letter within like 10 minutes. And I'm like, that sounds way too soon. Your not pre-approval, but your pre-qual came way too soon. And using this pre-qual, we're now going shopping, and I feel big unease in my heart. thinking that why did it take so little time to get that pre-approval letter? So what do you, and they think that, hey, since I got pre-qual, it means that they checked my credit history and we're good to go. And I have to caution them, the first time buyer, that once we go under a contract, then they will start to do condition, then they start to do all of that stuff. So you haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg yet of everything that's going to come out. And just because we're under contract doesn't mean that we can close. So what do you, once they, apparently, based on what you're saying, they don't even get into that, stage of checking for liens until we're already under a contract and doing the pretty much the buyer underwriting.
Yeah, it you would figure, why wouldn't you want to do that on the front end, right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And so the issue is that it's an expensive report, which is called what it is.
Mm,
Everybody who goes into submits an application for with a lender, you have to understand it's just to kind of start the basis of, hey, what do you qualify for, right? Um, they're going to start looking into financials. A lot of times we like to think as a consumer, and I've been guilty of this in the past, that, well, I would like a certain type of a house, and that house sometimes is not in my range, in my price range. There's things to take into consideration. I talk a lot of that with my clients. Your debt to income ratio is a huge thing.
mm-hmm,
Money's coming in, money's going out. Sometimes we need
mm-hmm,
to tighten the belt. Sometimes we need to start deciphering between the luxuries and necessities in life. If you drive a really nice car and you have a small apartment, and there's not a solid, healthy balance of your income and what you're frivolous spending, you could be considered a high risk, and you won't be considered for. You might think you make a good amount of money, but at the end of the day, on paper, the numbers just don't add up. So there's a lot of things before you want to start pulling a $50, $70 credit report through LexisNexis. Before you do that,
mm-hmm,
you also got to look at your taxes, right?
mm-hmm,
That's one of the questions I also ask is, what about, have you filed your taxes in the last 2 years? You're going to have an underwriter who's going to be looking at your bank statements. They're going to look at your spending. They're going to look at, you're going to go under a little bit of the microscope. And then we're going to look at your banking institution. What do you actually have saved up right now?
mm-hmm,
Are you prepared for that rainy day? I think with COVID happening last year, when the pandemic started, it put a lot of people, in a situation where I think we have this mentality where it's like, oh, if I'm running low on money or something like that, I'll work some more extra hours. I'll pick up an extra shift. I'll do a little bit more extra overtime, and not really setting aside that nest egg and putting that savings away. And what ended up happening is that the rug kind of got pulled out from underneath us, and we weren't prepared for that.
mm-hmm.
Where we didn't have that savings, and for some folks, there's some like myself. I squirrel away as much money as I can, just for that rainy day in case something were to happen, to be prepared. But a lot weren't, and now we have a realistic idea of, hey, what our money is going towards to. And
Mm-hmm.
so these are things that an underwriter, a mortgage company, are going to start scrutinizing on. Because at the end of the day, this is going to be the most significant purchase of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. And some people might say, well, I'm going to find a house that's like $85,000 and it's going to be somewhere out or like that.
I don't think that it's not going to be a house they will be able to live in unless it's like a single wide, without a roof. A lot of people are under the strange misconception. They say, I want to have a 5-bedroom house and I want my mortgage payments to be around $800 per month. So I'm like, well, then you better have a very nice down payment on that house. But no, they actually think that they can say, I see that a lot of misconceptions about how the mortgage works. They said, I want a house with 5 bedrooms in a nice school district in Frisco, and I want my house payments to be about $800. What can you show me? No, I will show you something called Dreamland, and we can go drive there. But until then, we're sitting in your apartment. Now, let's just say that I flipped to so I know that, for example, I had a dispute with one of my cards, right? Now, let's imagine and they charged me something that I didn't think they should have charged me, and I just left it there. And we talked about it, we disputed it, and I just let it be, and I didn't think about it anymore. And now it came up, and when I'm flipping through my credit report, I noticed that it's reported as a negative. So how do but it's been 5 years, right? For example. I'm like, I'm afraid to touch it. From what I've heard, if you call them, it will reactivate everything and then we'll start from the beginning. So should I call them? Should I not call them?
That's a great question. I think a lot of credit repair companies use that, what I call it, a sleazy sales tactic about not wanting to, you're going to start the clock over. You cannot
Mm-hmm.
start the clock over.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we're talking about today was the original date of delinquency, tracing it back to that default date.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we talk about 4 years of statute limitations here in the state of Texas for a creditor or finance company to file a judgment, or a collection agency to file a judgment against you. 7-year statute for consumer reporting, where it would need to be removed from my credit report after 7 years. But where does that all start from? That original date of delinquency.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is that communicating with the creditor. A lot of times, I'm working on a case right now with a gentleman who had that exact same situation happen to him. He has a Discover credit card. He was compromised, and they backed up all of the purchases on his Discover card. And obviously, it shut down the card. It was under investigation. They did all that, and they took off all the purchases.
Mm-hmm.
But what they did not take off was the interest that accrued
Mm-hmm.
during that time
Mm-hmm.
from those purchases, and he refused to pay that.
Mm-hmm.
And got into a heated battle with Discover, which he said basically, forget it, screw it, I'm not gonna pay you. The problem with
Mm-hmm.
this, guys, is that you're going to open up yourself to Discover or any other creditor saying, no, 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 through you. They're going to report your 30-day, 60-day, 90. They will bleed you out for 4 to 5 months and then shut the card down. And again, just because it went to a charge-off status does not mean it was written off. It's still accruing.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that you're still leaving yourself open for some type of legality. You're still leaving yourself open for that balance you choose to keep accruing and building to the point where it might become a troublesome headache. You got to remember, when this goes into a judgment status, you are looking at not just the fees that are associated with this account, the interest, the penalties, late fees, and court costs, and plaintiff's attorney's fees.
Mm-hmm.
This is a credit card company's attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're talking about that little, I shouldn't have to pay that. I get it. It's a moral issue sometimes, and I wouldn't want to pay it either. But I will continue to keep the minimum on there, but I will still be fighting and pursuing it. And that's the problem nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
We want everything to happen immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And we do live in an instant gratification world, and I get that, especially if you can go on Amazon and have something delivered in the same day, and that has given us, uh, unfortunately, that perception that things should happen immediately with a creditor or a finance company, and that creditor, sometimes you're going to have to dig in. You're going to have to battle out, as long as you document everything that you do. So I wouldn't just simply let it go into a default status. Now, with contacting them, Elena, you said 5 years. You waited 5 years, and I don't want to contact them because I'll kick it back up. There is something called, when you communication, you can renew the account. What I mean by renewing the account, you could take a dormant account that stopped reporting. I'll give you an example. Collection accounts are notorious for this.
Mm-hmm.
It's called a date of last activity, a
Mm-hmm.
DLA. If you look at a mortgage report, guys, if you're looking at a consumer report, you can see where is the date at last updated on your credit report. A collection agency is going to be a brand new account that hits your credit report, that it wasn't like a finance company or a credit card account. It didn't bleed out, charged off, and then shut down. It was born and originated on your credit report as a closed collection account.
Mm-hmm.
The moment, the date the month of the year that it populated onto your credit report is your date of last activity.
Mhm.
Collection companies are not going to continue to pay to update it monthly. So
Mhm.
I have one from January 2016. When I communicate, I want to resolve this account. I'm going to go and contact this collection agency now. I advise doing that over the phone. The
Mhm.
reason for this is that one, you don't even know if that dollar amount is associated with the account is 100% accurate. Collection agencies are going to take advantage of you because they're going to see you as an uneducated consumer. If I can hit you for more money and have you agree to pay that, why not?
Mhm.
Collection companies buy portfolios of accounts, kind of like Walmart. Walmart doesn't buy 1,000 units of product. Walmart buys 1,000,000 units of product.
Mhm.
Same thing with a collection agency. They buy not 1,000, but 100,000 of these accounts, or 500,000 of these accounts. They pick up your account for pennies on the dollar. A good indication of this, of how of a good of a deal they picked up our account, is the drastic settlement offer they're willing to offer you when you see that collection in the mail. You owe me $1,000, but I'll settle right now for $200.
Mhm.
Man, that's the deal of a lifetime.
Mhm.
Problem is that we never had anybody validate that $1,000.
Mhm.
If we go to let's say we go to happy hour, Elena, and between me and you, we could probably spend $50. It's pretty easy to say, right?
Mhm.
What if the bartender came back with $400 tab?
Mhm.
First thing we're looking for is an itemized breakdown, aren't we?
Mhm.
We would do it at a happy hour. We would do it at a restaurant.
Mhm.
I literally did this at the supermarket because I didn't think I got my additional 30%, like the rack said. I
Mhm.
went back inside after I unloaded my groceries because
Mhm.
I wanted to see if it was, but how come we don't do that with our credit
Mhm.
where it really matters?
Mhm.
So now this collection agency is trying to take advantage of you because you are, as a human, are going to justify this dollar amount associated with the account. You haven't paid somebody since January of 2016, and this is things been going low for 5 years. Well, there's interest and penalties and late fees and all these things associated with the account. So it would kind of sound and make sense that it would be 1,000. Let me go ahead and pick them up on the 200. You contact the collection agency. Here's what happens. Elena, in order for me to bring up your file, what's your social security number
Mhm.
or an address?
Mhm.
Is there a reference number on that collection letter we sent you? The moment that
Mhm.
you gave that information, here's the next thing you're going to hear. Before we move
Mhm.
forward, this call is being recorded, monitored for quality assurances and attempt to collect debt.
Mhm. Mhm.
What you've done is disclose your personal information and you now revalidated the debt. You brought
Mhm.
that account information from January 2016 and you have now brought it present in 2021. You've
Mhm.
updated the date of last activity.
Mhm.
Now here's the problem with that. Depending on how many derogatory accounts you have, let's say this is the one account.
Mhm.
You brought a current account to present time, your score, and you don't have any other collections, probably going to take about a 60 to 80 point hit.
Oh wow. Mhm. That's a big
Because
hit.
every time you distance yourself from a derogatory, you're slowly going to start to see your points increase as time goes on.
Mhm.
Kind of like time heals all, right?
Mhm.
But the situation you can run into is that a collection agency is not going to, or a creditor is not just going to simply let something fall off a credit report in 7 years. What are we going to do? We're going to sell it to the next guy because something is better than nothing. And I'd rather take a little bit of a loss so that way instead of just letting it fall off and not, obtaining any type of money for that account.
Mhm.
Now, that new collection agency is not going to go and say, well, this is from an original account from 5, 6 years ago for Elena. I'm going to backdate this account because that's not the open date for them. The open date is present time of 2021. You're going to see a lot of this happen as well, too, when people start to dispute information on their credit report.
Mhm.
That's inaccurate reporting. I don't agree with that. Or like you said, I don't even know what that is. What is this on my credit report? And what you do next is you go and dispute it. Let's say you get it off. As you got to give it right, yes, you can dispute information across all 3 reporting agencies.
Mhm.
You get the account off. But what is stopping from that collection agency or that creditor selling the account to a collection company, a new one? Nothing. The problem is that us as consumers, we don't go to the root of the problem. We're not digging in and going after the source of that problem. So if you're scratching at the surface and you submit a dispute, all you're doing is deleting it from the bureau level. You're not deleting from the records of a creditor or collection agency, which still leaves yourself being open to new information being reported.
Mm-hmm.
Contacting a collection agency is probably one of the worst things you can do if you're not prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying don't pay your collection bills. Pay them.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the means to do it, pay it. If you feel that's going to be beneficial for you, then do so.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that not all collection agencies are allowed to give you, like, let's say, a letter of deletion. Well, I'm just going to go and call them and make a payment, and then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and have them remove it from my credit report.
Mm-hmm.
The misconception is that if I pay this account off my credit, it's off the credit report. There's nothing in consumer or federal law that states that. And not be clear about it. It's a moral issue where people have that you would think that if you receive my monies in return, you would delete off my account. You have to understand this as a consumer. Your credit report is a record of how you repay people back. Creditors don't, I don't care how good you are, you try to negotiate for an item, if you defaulted on the city credit card and you paid them after the fact and after it went to charge off and you get a settlement offer, there's no way in the world you're going to be able to negotiate a letter of deletion because city wants to flag you for the rest of the next 7 years. They want people to not just let themselves know, but let everybody else know. This is how he or she repaid me back. So the thing is that if you're going to go and dispute information like a collection account, if you don't agree with it, you don't know where it's coming from them, write them a letter. You can go online, you can do I get it's very easy just to go online, let's do it faster, let's type it out. You're only limited to so many characters. One of the cases I'm fighting right now, Joe, I didn't even live in the state to receive that medical attention. How can that even be me? One thing you could have done is I told the gentleman, I was like, take a copy, you got your lease from Realtor? He's like, yes, sir, I sure do. And I said, perfect. Write a letter to the collection agency, staple your lease to that statement, let them know where you're residing, and have a picture of your driver's license. I've never been a resident of your state. You could even show with your employer if you haven't had documentation from a W-2. Guess what? It was your doctor's credit report. But had he gone in and tried to argue with the collection agency and update that information, he would have taken an additional loss because the date of last activity. So if it was me, if you have a disagreement with an account like your situation, Elena, what you're talking about with that 5-year credit card, first let's get the facts straight of what exactly is it? Is it mine? When did it shut down? And then also I would probably want to contact the creditor. If you're going to contact the original creditor, here's the good thing about probate right now. Like the one good thing. You're able to negotiate a great settlement offer.
Okay.
Last year, at the beginning of this pandemic, with the CARES Act coming into place, the CARES Act has given consumers a little bit of breathing room, giving them an opportunity to file extensions, get payments deferred, be placed in forbearances. Or, if I can't work, how do I pay my car? How do I pay my mortgage, right? So the thing is that the CARES Act did give us consumers a little bit of breathing room, which prevented major companies like corporate finance companies from obtaining money. They're a business too, right? So the thing is that a lot of folks saw quite a bit of a hit last year financially. When a lot of these accounts that were sitting dormant on your credit report, let's say Chase has been on your credit in a default status since 2017. Well, maybe it's time I want to go ahead and take advantage of the situation because Chase and like a lot of other creditors are disclosing record settlement offers to consumers where we're literally seen anywhere. Lowest settlement I got from Chase for one of my clients was 8 cents on the dollar.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
You're talking about when you were receiving statements pre-COVID,
Mm-hmm.
you were looking at anywhere from 50 to 85 cents on the dollar. Now it's because we're kind of hurting financially because we had a bad year. We need to make up for that. We're a little bit more accepting to making those settlement offers.
You know what? This is a very important topic. I think that it would deserve a separate, almost a video in itself, because a lot of times people see negative as a negative. And I
Right.
always say the nature doesn't have a negative only. The nature always provides for a equilibrium. So if there is a negative, there got to be a positive. We just need to figure out how to use this negative to turn it into a positive. So you're kind of a perfect example of how to take a negative and turn it into a positive, right? I would really love to have another video with you on that, because that would be an awesome topic to upload on YouTube. But just to let you know, we're at the top of the hour. We didn't get very far, but I kind of expected that, because these topics, they're so complex and there is so much to unpack in them. It's very hard to hop from topic to topic without giving it unjust, without giving you have to give the topic justice, or you wouldn't even start it at all. So let's do this. Let's have another one. So we stopped at the potential negatives, how to go about resolving them. Let's stop right now. So because people who are watching this probably not going to watch past 1 hour. It's just too long of a recording. Let's schedule another webinar, and we'll just pick up where we left. So we're going to link this recording as the answer to the first
Part two.
the first two questions. And then we're going to proceed until we cover all the questions, because this is something that this whole entire situation of how to start, how to attack your negatives, all of that is something that people ask me. And I'm like, I'm a real estate agent. I can advise you on a lot of things, but how to clean up your credit report, I'm just not a person to be consulted with. So on that note, let's go ahead and do this. Let's wrap up for today, and then let's reschedule for another time and go through the rest of the topics. So again, my name is Elena, and my contact information is here. If you do not want to miss our next conversation with Joe, click subscribe. This way you will never miss any videos for us. And just in case you want to contact Joe about any questions for related to your own situation, obviously we can only cover so much. Here is his phone number. It is not a cell phone. Do not try to text it. And that is his email address. And if you want to check out his credentials, go to thephoenixgroup.com and check out the ratings for if you want to pull up their consumer reviews, all of that. Feel free to do that. They have fantastic reviews. This is one of the reasons why I chose Joe as one of my premier credit analyst for my YouTube channel. So feel free to contact him, and he will let you explain your situation, and he will take care of you. I absolutely trust in that. With that said, let's go ahead and wrap up for today, and let's meet again next time.
Thank you, Elena. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
So hold on one second.